Good evening. I'd like to call this Wednesday, January 10th, 2024 meeting of the City of Manassas Park Planning Commission to order. The time is 7 p.m. My name is Lester Finkel. Sitting this evening are Kevin Petak, John Evans, and Michael Beckett's. Our first order of business is the moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Beckett's, will you lead us?
Sure.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item is the approval of the agenda for this evening. Any changes?
No.
Seeing none, would anyone care to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion, second.
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next agenda item is adoption of minutes for our December 13th, 2023 meeting. I just had one minor edit for it. Any other changes? Seeing none, would anyone care to make a motion to adopt the meeting minutes as amended?
So moved.
Motion, second.
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. No members of the public are present this evening. I don't see any, so we'll move along. We have one main item of business this evening. It's a presentation informational item regarding Park Central Streetscape Plan. And thank you for coming before us. If you would announce your affiliation and your name, and please begin your presentation.
Well, thank you as well. My name is Dave Stigler with Panoni, and this is Ed Millis with Trees Please. Ed's an arborist. I'm a landscape architect, and we're here to present the streetscape plan that we prepared for Park Central.
Thanks.
Just give me a second here. I'm going to sit down because I can work the mouse a little better.
Go right ahead.
Well, these two documents side by side. Can everyone hear me okay?
You can move that down if you need to. So.
Okay. Is my voice volume good? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So these two documents, I believe you got in your package. The one on the right is the report, and the one on the left is the plan. And this is about the third time I think we've kind of done this presentation, Ed and I, and it made sense to use this program called Bluebeam and kind of have a split screen and go through the report and go with the plan side by side. We'll go kind of toggle back and forth. And very casual, you know, if you have a question, don't wait till the end. Just feel free to stop me.
Thank you.
This is for you guys, not for me. And it made sense last time that we did the presentation just to kind of go through the report in sequence, because the report really tells the whole story. So the purpose for this report was to, we understand that City of Manassas Park is in the process of placemaking, that Park Central is their new downtown, has an opportunity to improve the economic vibrancy, safety, and public enjoyment of this space. We understand that about the new things coming on board, and the new movie theater, the new restaurants and other commercial activity along the street. So the process was to do a tree inventory within the 4 blocks. We found about 150 trees. We tagged them, evaluated them, and that was Ed's wheelhouse. Came up with recommendations for each tree. The trees that we found that were unhealthy or obstructing visibility for commercial storefronts or pedestrians at crosswalks, we called for them to be removed. Also, some trees were hazards with low-hanging branches along sidewalks, and we call that out on the plan too. So what the report identifies is probably, well, loosely about 10 different items that we're trying to do with the plan. And they're kind of in the order of importance between what we heard from the city was important to achieve with this plan. Very important along Manassas Drive, we heard, to increase the visibility of the commercial storefronts. With the way it is today, with these trees here along Manassas Drive on the west side of Manassas Drive, they really hide any opportunity for signage for the restaurants, and quite frankly, there's just too many trees. They vary between 15 feet apart to about 30 feet apart, and because of the type of tree, this is a Zelkova. It really doesn't lend itself to be limbed up like another kind of tree would be. So it's, in our opinion, we concluded it was really the wrong specimen to have for this streetscape. So this is a street. What we're proposing is we're proposing to take the trees out and propose willow oaks. Primarily willow oaks along that stretch. Let me go to the plan here. Okay, this is the stretch of streetscape here, and here's all the trees with the X's in them. We're proposing to come out, and the proposed plan looks like this. So the trees are spaced roughly 50 to 60 feet on center, so there'd be bigger gaps for vehicles going through this area to see signage. We're also proposing to enlarge some of the planting areas. Some of the beds were just too small, and it was just too tight to have a good situation for planting. These areas in red represent parts of paved areas that are coming out per our plan. So these areas, and this area that's crosshatched is where a tree is today that would have to be filled in with hardscape. So what we're doing is we're enlarging some of the beds that are on the peripheral and filling in the interior trees with hardscape for a better opportunity to have a nicer streetscape.
Could you explain that term, hardscape?
Hardscape is a hard surface, like a sidewalk, something that you could walk on, concrete, pavers, versus a softscape, which is a planting area.
And does that also include seating walls? Because I saw that term used as well.
Yep. I'd call a seating wall part of the
Anything
hardscape.
concrete in nature.
Right.
Okay.
Something hard versus soft,
Okay.
which is a planting area. Yep. The orange areas are the areas that trees are coming out and that would be filled in with concrete. So in this area, this stretch of the project, there's actually a reduction in the number of trees. Overall, though, there's a net increase in this area. As we go on, we'll show you where we found some areas to provide some naturalized reforestation buffers. Let me just show you some pictures I took Falls Church. This is a retail street in Falls Church, and these are willow oaks, about maybe 40 feet on center, and you can limb them up better than Zelkova. So you can limb them up to about 20. As they grow, you can limb them up to 20 or 30 feet, and the signage is then visible.
And I take it Willow Oaks, London Plain, and there's a third one too that I think was one of the larger trees, the 50-foot variety.
Yeah.
Those are among the best of trees for looming up. Is that generally true?
They definitely will take the limbing well. Yeah, and these Zelkovas, the way their branching habit is, it just doesn't lend itself to this. Here, this is a close-up of the Zelkova. So if you were to take some of these lower branches out, all the branches just kind of like come out of one area about 10 feet up or lower than that on the tree. So it's just not a great street tree to have good visibility with signage and storefronts.
And it seems like that's the majority of the trees that we
It
have
is.
in place currently, is Zelkovas.
It is. That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Here's another picture of some mature willow oaks, and you can see that clearly you've got good visibility of these awnings and street. Now, these trees have been there for 50 years. So what we're proposing going in is what they call a 3-inch caliber tree. So it's about this big down here and probably about 12 to 15 feet high. Okay, so this is the west side of Manassas Drive, and then the east side is a lot shorter, but there's still some areas where we feel there's opportunity to extend the planting bed. So here's an extension of the planting bed. This tree's coming out. This is the Zelkova. This tree's coming out and being filled with hardscape. And this is a large planting area as well. And then the proposed plan looks like this.
Do you have any visual examples of the hardscape, what that generally looked like with the seating walls and, with the grasses that well, you haven't gotten to the grasses yet, but.
We've got existing condition pictures of the seating wall, but, and we're not proposing any new seating walls, but,
Okay.
yeah. Let me flip through here and find one for you.
Yeah, that was the one thing that I couldn't tell from your package. It was tough to visualize what those areas are going to look like with the grasses around the trees. I couldn't really visualize that too well, and I was wondering if you had some examples.
I don't have any examples of like masses of grasses. I do have pictures of the grasses, but not like big beds of grasses. That we could come up with those. This is one of the concrete seating walls in front of the retail areas. It's
Gotcha.
18 inches high. This is there today.
When you talk about bringing in new trees,
Right.
of different species, how mature would those trees be, like in terms of like size? Would they be sort of fully mature? Like, are you bringing in like massive trees, or how long would it take for those trees to grow from sort of the size you would bring them into sort of expected maturity? I think that
Right.
sort of goes into sort of cost and
Right,
things of that
right.
nature.
Yeah, and in our opinion, there's definitely an optimum size tree to work with. If it's the bigger the tree, not only is it more expensive, it's just harder to move. It can be damaged as it's coming in, and it's not as young and vivacious. It's so these are 3-inch caliber trees, depending on the tree, 12 to 15 feet high, maybe about 8 feet wide, depending on the tree. And so when we say a 3-inch caliper, it's actually measured about 6 inches above the ball, and that's the width of the trunk.
Okay.
So
And how long would that tree take to get to maturity?
Oh,
Decades.
yeah, 50 years. Let's go back to that Falls Church streetscape I showed you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they've been there for quite a while.
Hey, let me interject.
Absolutely.
If you, one of the advantages to the smaller trees, the 3-inch caliper, if it doesn't make it, it's relatively simple to replace it. You bring in a 8 or 10-inch caliper tree, and if it doesn't make it, that's a nightmare. You gotta bring in big equipment, you gotta dig it out, disrupt everything around it, and then put a new one back in somehow. So there's just there's a downside to going with larger trees. There's more immediate effect, but there's a lot more economic, a lot more money on the line, so to speak.
But even when these are smaller, I mean, I'm trying to visualize it, it doesn't look like the branch structure is as confining on the visualization of the business signage. Is that true or not?
No, I think that's true. I think that the Zelkova has a cluster of branches right at eye level, where these trees, like the willow oak, has a major stem, and it has little branches that come off. Yep. In our opinion, it's a better street tree.
Yeah. Is there an advantage to one over the other? There were three. There was the willow oak, the London plane, and the ginkgo.
Ginkgo.
Appeared to be the three big, the trees will get to 40, 50 feet that you're recommending. And for those 6 trees that front on the south side of Manassas Drive, is there one advantage to one or the other? I mean, I noticed you chose multiple types.
There's aesthetic advantages. Ginkgos look different from a willow oak, so it's also good not to have a one monoculture. It's in case something comes in and a disease that sweeps through, and that's interesting.
And its aesthetics is more color in the fall, different color in the fall.
Yeah, exactly. Health-wise, it's better to have a variety.
Yeah, definitely, you don't want a monoculture. That's what you have now. I think you were the one who said that mostly.
It's mostly Zelkovas, yeah.
And that's not a good situation to be in. There's nothing wrong with Zelkovas. Zelkovas are good trees, but the conformation, the architecture of the tree makes it impossible to accomplish the goal of having visibility.
Mhm. I noticed you didn't recommend any flowering trees, and is that just because they don't fit the qualities that we're looking for with the visualization of the businesses and getting up? Because it seems like we want the trees to grow higher over time so the businesses can be well seen.
Along the streetscape, that's true. In an area where we've got one area where we're trying to reforest and to do a native a buffer of reforestation, and there's some smaller trees proposed in there. Shadblow, and that's a flowering tree.
Okay.
River birch, that's not a flowering tree. But
Those were going, as I recall, on the north side of Manassas
yeah,
Drive. Is that correct?
Yeah,
I think you had a couple shadblows.
right here.
Yeah.
This is in between the parking lot and the road,
Right.
and in this area here, that's shown on this other plan.
Where we have a net gain in trees in those two areas.
That's absolutely.
Area 3 and Manassas Drive West, or the west side.
Right. And right now, it's there are street trees, but the parking lot's very visible from the street, so it's a good opportunity to renaturalize that area, we thought. Any other questions this time?
I don't have any more on the trees, I don't think.
Okay. Well, another concern we heard from the city was just increasing the opportunity for seating along the streetscape. And this area, this west side of Manassas Drive has a lot of interior trees. There's probably, over 6 interior lindens. And our plan proposes to take them out, and that would, and fill it in with hardscape, take the planting bed out and put sidewalk back in there. And that would really increase the potential seating area for these restaurants. You know, we heard in one of the meetings we had that they're looking for the possibility of having a little outdoor seating corral area for these restaurants. And right now, it's chopped up by various planting beds. Okay.
I noticed there were trees in the median. I just took a drive down to Park Center today just to see and visualize some of this. Noticed there were trees in the median, a lot of which were smaller type trees that didn't appear to be flagged as trees, that the 150 trees that you surveyed. Is that, are they trees, or are those crepe myrtles in the median? What are those?
Well, that's a good segue for this next item. I think it might be these shadlows that were by the crosswalks, where they're
They're
like,
actually in the median.
yeah, right. So,
Near crosswalks.
and
yeah.
that was flagged by the city as being a safety concern, that pedestrians get into this crosswalk and have to, well, as they're crossing the crosswalk, these lower trees, these Amelanchier shadlows, are hiding pedestrians from vehicles. And so that was pointed out to us, and we're recommending that those trees come out and be replaced with a lower shrub as opposed to a tree.
But I guess what I'm asking about is there appeared to be many more smaller ones in the medians that didn't appear to be surveyed. Whenever I looked at the ones being X'd out for the medians, there were only very few, and it appeared like we have many trees in the medians there. Or at least that's what I noticed whenever I drove through there today.
Well, I'm fairly certain we caught all the trees. Like here's
Okay.
this is the demolition plan. There's trees in the median. Now these trees, I think these are Zelkovas as well. I don't think they're healthy. I think that's why they're coming out. And then maybe there's a section that maybe beyond our scope of Park Central. Maybe you're thinking.
No, it seemed like it was more on the western side.
So there's
Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I'm not visualizing the area quite right. Because there's 3 trees there flagged right now on the western side to be removed, but it seemed whenever I drove through there today that there's 10
more.
or so trees, 10 or so
There's 3 more here.
trees in there.
There's some taller shade trees. And then at the intersection with
Okay.
Market, you have that same condition where the smaller trees are blocking
Okay, so
pedestrians.
they are flagged. The smaller
Yeah.
trees are in fact flagged.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
And then,
Is it true generally that all of the trees are being removed from the medians? Is that?
no, these are, but on the other side, these trees are not. There's three shade trees.
Okay.
Those 2 are not.
Which is interesting, because I noticed that some of them, in reading over it, were suffering, because of the confinement, the confined space. And it's interesting that some appear to be surviving and others aren't, which is just curious.
Sometimes there seems to be no rhyme or reason to it, but one of the things about trees is that if you put a tree in and it doesn't get the care it needs, it's on life support for a period of time after you plant a new tree. If you miss a watering, it may decline and may never recover from that.
Mhm.
So we talked about the pedestrians, the safety concern with the crosswalks, replacing these lower trees with shrubs. This is a grow low sumac, which is a native. As much as possible, we'd like to stick with the natives. It's impossible to have it be entirely native plants. because the palette is fairly thin then. But this is a native, and what's nice about it too is it matures at a certain height that you don't have to ever trim it. There might be some corrective pruning, but it stays low.
Does that get color in the fall?
It does. This is a fallish color. Gets an orange.
And I noticed you used, is it called Abelia?
Abelia.
Abelia as well,
Yeah.
which that's a flowering shrub.
That will flower. That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Is that a spring flowering shrub?
I think in the summer, right?
Late summer.
Okay.
Yeah, and that stays semi-evergreen too. And again, the variety we propose stays low, so we're not dealing with pruning and shearing and ending up with like boxes. Another thing we heard from the city is to keep the view shed open for the future outdoor screen for the movie theater. And there weren't a lot of trees. Here's a picture of a couple trees that are small trees that were planted probably about 4 or 5 years ago. That in the future they will get big and block visibility. So we're calling for them to come out. Now it doesn't have to happen right away because it can be phased in when it's necessary.
So that was going to be another question that I had, is there a potential to phase this project?
Absolutely.
Because, obviously we don't know, we're hoping the theater builds an outside screen, but obviously that's up to them as a business decision.
Mm-hmm.
So if they decide not to do that, then we may not want to remove those trees. Although it doesn't sound like those are great trees, because those are the multi-trunk trees I think you identified that aren't ideal.
Yeah, so the ones on the movie theater side are the Zelkovas. On the City Hall side, I believe, are Tilias, linden trees, if I remember right.
So there is a potential to phase all this work depending
There
upon
is.
the development that's going on.
There is, in fact, one of the comments that we got by presenting to the city manager was to break it up into pieces. And I think there's 6 different pieces that we took our overall cost estimate and broke it into pieces. So we have more manageable to mix and match and whatever wants to happen at different times.
And just out of curiosity, and this is more a question for the commission here, maybe not you always, I noticed that the streetscaping plan stopped at what's going to be Liberty, and didn't seem to go much beyond that on the west side. Is that because the Artema Park development that we approved the site plan for at the last meeting, is that because that streetscaping is part of that project?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Yeah, we actually had a chance to comment on what they were proposing and provided our input for that plan. So it should all work together then. This next item in the report talks about the opportunity to have this, to take this green grass area between the parking lot and Manassas Drive and plant it up with native trees and just really have a nice buffer between the back of the house, City Hall building and the parking lot in Manassas Drive.
And I noticed you're also doing that in Area 3, near the train tracks as well.
Right.
I think John may have asked this at a prior meeting, or we may have talked about this, I'm not sure. Is there a possibility to put something for Park Central signage, like a nice flower bed and Park Central sign?
Yeah, that's something we'll look to in the future. Right now, priority is we're doing
Okay.
wayfinding signage and entrance signage in our budget. So when you, on 28, we're going to have a welcome to Manassas Park. On coming from 28 south to the north, there'll be a screen, kind of like what Manassas has, but a nicer digital screen. On the north side coming south, there'll be a nicer sign. Then we'll have wayfinding for public interest, points like parks and City Hall, Library, and then we're gonna have business wayfinding signage for theater, grocery, whatever ends up coming here to guide residents that way. So that's, and then we'll have downtown parking signs. That's kind of step one, and then I'm keeping that spot purposely open because right now I want to wait, get this downtown done, and then in the future we're going to decide what to do with that little land, if there's any other creative thing we can do with it depending on what ends up coming here.
Excellent.
Another concern was these trees on the north side of Manassas Drive, that the Zelkovas, and there's a couple river birches as well, the limbs are coming down and really kind of hitting people in the head, and so they're I call them a hazard. You know, people would be hit by them, so we're calling for them to be pruned up. And that's something I believe is going to happen pretty soon. This next item is a SEPTED issue. SEPTED stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. And the idea is to not have these hiding places for people to spring out at people and you know, be cause harm. Several places where there's some very mature hedge, I guess, or yews, evergreen yews that you've been shearing, someone's been shearing over and over again, and they're probably about 4 or 5 feet high. There's an area on Market Street and an area on Manassas Drive, on the other side of Manassas Drive, over here, that has a lot of these hedges. And we're calling to replace those with this abelia, this smaller, lower shrub that won't ever grow to that height.
Dave, let me add in there that one of the things about those hedges is that you have to shear them over and over and over. It just never ends. Once you start, you can't quit. And you can't control the size of them either. The shrubs and the grasses that are on the plan are things that can, if they do get too big or they get damaged, maybe a car runs off and hits one, you can cut them to the ground and they will regenerate and grow back out. So that's not something, you don't need skilled labor to do that, whereas if you're shearing the hedge, the person who's doing it has to know what he's doing or it's going to end up looking kind of ratty.
These next series of photos are actually photos of the trees we're proposing, and they're in alphabetical order based on the Latin names. So starting with Shadblow or Amelanchier. Now this is proposed in that native area where we're doing the reforestation buffer, and you can see it does have a flowering. In fact, it's called Shadblow because it flowers when the shad run up the streams. That's where it got its name. River birch. Here's ginkgo. And there was a question about the sizes and ages of things. This is a smaller ginkgo. This is probably, I mean, I would say this ginkgo is about 20 plus feet high. Now, if going in at 3 inches, Ed, what do you think, like after 5 years, we get to this level?
No, I don't. That's a slow grower.
Okay. So maybe like 10 years?
Yeah, probably so.
Okay. Okay. This is in the fall, by the way. It has a beautiful fall color. Black gum is a native. That's another slow grower. London plane tree. Swamp white oak. That's a native. And then willow oak is a native as well. We've talked about that already.
You kind of hit on this a little bit, I think, but can you elaborate? Would the maintenance of all of what you're suggesting, in your judgment, will it be, less intensive than what we have in place currently, or? It's about the same, more intensive? What's your judgment?
Well, what you've got out there today are more trees along the street in some areas. Trees need some maintenance, there's no doubt about it. I would say it's about the same. I think that the shrubs, there's definitely a huge advantage of these shrubs versus the shearing of the shrubs all the time that are there today. A lot of the planting beds were proposing grasses, and why that's good is they kind of change throughout the season, and it's a very nice effect. But once a year, just before they start regenerating again in the spring, it probably would be a crew of about a day to come through and cut the grasses down and start from scratch again. So that's more maintenance than what's there today. I believe most of the beds there today have liriope in them, which is very low maintenance. Ed, do you have anything to add on
Yeah,
that?
I think most of the shrubs that are out there right now are getting pruned, and I wouldn't do that. I would leave them alone rather than prune them. They don't need to be pruned. But once you start pruning them, again, you can't stop. You have to keep on. If people have different perspectives on what's attractive, of course, but if you want a perfectly round plant, you're going to have to shear it. If you can let it grow somewhat naturally, then you don't have to prune it. And the ones we selected there are in that category. You can let them grow, and they will be attractive, but they won't need to be pruned.
You mentioned the grasses. I noticed you have 4 different types of grasses going in. Is there a reason for 4? Is it again the aesthetics and you don't want a monochrome look? It seems like it gets more complex if you have that many different types, but
It would look better, though.
You'll cluster them. They won't be scattered amongst themselves, so you'll have one block of the switchgrass and then another one of the fountain grass. So there'll be some variety, some change in it, but it won't be hodgepodge.
so it's more for the aesthetics.
It
And taking
is.
care of these, are they all about the same maintenance-wise? You just cut them once a year and water them about the same? Is that?
Very little water.
Once they get established, yeah, that's one of the benefits of these grasses. They will take the dry urban conditions. The maintenance at the end of the growing season, which I'd leave them up throughout the winter, because there's a lot of beauty in just the natural grasses in the winter. But before they start sprouting again, then you should bring them down to the ground and let them start over. As far as why there's 4 as opposed to just 1, it's aesthetics. I think it'd be, it's like asking an architect, why do you put so many different things on your building, just to make it look better. Variety. These are the 2 shrubs, the abelia and the low-growth sumac. That other picture was in the fall. This is during the summer. It's all green for the low-growth sumac. Okay, blue gamma grass and blue lime grass, fountain grass. This is the lower variety, and then the switchgrass. 4 different grasses. Okay, the report goes in and talks about the tree planting areas. And that's one thing we mentioned before, that there was a couple beds that were cramped. So we're proposing to remove some of the pavement around the trees. And for a healthy tree, you need to have a certain amount of good planting area and soil. There's an opportunity, as we were out there, Ed pointed this out to me, that using these a couple places where you have these existing seat walls, you could put a new wall here, like a stackable block wall, and have like a raised bed, and that would be a good condition a good healthy condition for the tree to plant it, keep it high, and provide good drainage for the tree.
Dave, that would also put a barrier between the vehicles and the pedestrians, the diners, which is apparently diners really like to have that.
The report concludes with a paragraph or two about coming up with a plant healthcare plan that you really need to keep an eye on them, and not just, they're living organisms. You have to pay attention to them in the beginning to get them established. They need to be watered. I would not recommend irrigation. It seems like that's more trouble than it's worth. Once trees get established and plants get established, they really don't need irrigation. In fact, there's no irrigation out there today, and those trees have survived. A little statement about the mulching. You talk about maintenance. Very typically, what happens is that too much mulch is put down around trees, and before you know it, the mulch doesn't disintegrate. So before you know it, after a couple years, you've got a foot plus of mulch, and it's burying the tree. It's smothering the roots. The mulch is up against the base of the tree. That's not healthy. So that's something that we saw that a lot out there, and it's not, not to ping on the city. It happens everywhere. It's a very common problem. These landscape maintenance crews, I think they get paid by how much mulch they sell and deliver and spread, and they over mulch when it comes down to it. The report concludes with a paragraph about the cost estimate. About $325,000, including soft costs, our estimate for the demo, for the hardscapes, and the new hardscape that fill in some of the holes, and the plants, the trees, plants, and shrubs.
Now, when you say that includes the cost of the hardscapes, you mentioned, for instance, the raised bed example, where you could, the one picture you have where it has the seating wall, where you could put in more wall and raise that bed. Is that type of work at all included in that hardscaping work?
We do address it, and let me go to the cost estimate here.
I was wondering, you mentioned that in the meeting with the city manager, that a phased approach is recommended or should be considered. I was wondering if you could talk about sort of the prioritization of the phasing.
Yeah, Park 170 is going to be priority number one. We have some businesses looking to open up there, Little Bowl being the first one, and they are demanding that the trees be removed because they're blocking their visibility. So we'll start with Park 170 and likely the medians as well, because there's safety concerns there. Then we'll move on to the other side, this side of Manassas Drive, third, and then last will be the theater one, because we still have some time for that. Yeah, so I'll break it off over a few, but we'll try to move quickly, probably this spring, summer for Park 170, but I'm gonna have to work with that owner because we don't technically own that section. We're partnering with them. We have an agreement with them for parking arrangements, and it covers, the desire to remove and replace trees as well to improve visibility. So there's already a partnership with Park 170, but any final thing we have to do, we have to work with them.
And so the phased approach is more to do with sort of how things are being sort of built out as opposed to the cost associated with
It's kind of both. I don't want to blow all the budget if we don't have to, right? So I want to be cognizant of money here, and because there's a few other things we're doing there. We're looking at installing a hawk signal on the pedestrian crossing so that people can park behind where the current theater parking lot is, right? Just across the street from here. That parking is intended for Park 170 to support them out, but without any good pedestrian crossing, it's not ideal for retailers. So every restaurant I'm talking to, I'm letting them know we're going to have a pedestrian crossing that will actually be like a traffic light that will stop cars there when pedestrians are crossing. That's an expensive project too. So that plus the trees, we're applying for grants for other kind of safety improvements along the corridor. So there's a few things we want to do along this corridor, and then at the end of it, once the theater's done with construction, we want to be done with all the trees, and we're probably going to resurface all that section of Manassas Drive as well to pretty it up when we're kind of done with the downtown.
And so is there budget to meet the expected expense?
Yeah, there's budgets. We put in about $600,000 for the trees, for the hawk signal, some of the other stuff. We're applying for grants as well for all these to help reduce the cost to the city. And then we have a separate budget for the wayfinding signage. So we budgeted for it. Do we have to increase? Maybe. We'll have to go back once we get all the final quotes for everything and go back to the governing body. But that's why I wanted to have this phased option, just in case we're over budget. I can then put a request for a future year to knock those out.
Yeah. Thank you.
The last thing I wanted to bring up in the plan was some proposed treatments for the existing freestanding planters you have. Today, there's just one vertical, I guess it's like a boxwood, very thin boxwood, and then some pansies. And what's happened is that the dirt has just settled too much, and you can't even see the flowers in there. So this is a prototype of what you could do, where you have a tall thriller, and you have other bulbs and other annuals that are called fillers, and then you have spillers, like the trailing things. Now, this would require maintenance. This would, very, very commonly in a commercial area, they replace flowers and keep things full, maybe 4 times a year. Now, it wouldn't have to, but that's here's an example of a nice executed planter. And the plan has some planting details, and then the last page is a lot of specifications for the contractor and how to execute the plan. Any questions?
Well, I have a question for our planning manager, which is with regards to the fountain. I noticed the fountain is going to be taken out and replaced with a planting bed. Is that correct? Is the fountain no longer operable?
You know, they get it up and running. So where did you guys get that information? Is it an owner apartment?
We're guilty. we showed it filled in with a planter with plants. So
That was your recommendation?
that was our recommendation.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Okay, yeah. No, I haven't been told by that owner I would tell them to fix the fountain. I mean, they get it up and running sometimes. They need to replace it with a new one. That thing's old, probably over 10 years.
Because the fountain could be really nice, and I was wondering, is it not operable? Why are we not
No,
running
they get
it?
up and running it. It breaks down. They're not, I don't think they're focused 100% on the maintenance of it. I think my suggestion then is to replace it once we get all the businesses in. Go ahead and replace it with a new fountain, so that it's more operable. But they get it up and running sometimes when they'll neglect it for a while and it goes away. There's no businesses there, so it's not a priority.
I see.
Yeah, so we can remove that from the final report with somebody.
Okay.
Governing body.
Okay. There's a fountain on the other side of the street as well.
Yeah,
same deal.
keep, same thing. I have to talk
Okay.
with the owners before we
Yeah.
take any action.
We didn't touch that one. We're clean on that one. Good catch.
The fountain's a good touch.
It is. It is. And, you know, I have a general question too. I noticed you elected to go more with grasses in area as opposed to flower beds. Is that a cost issue? Is that, because I know flower beds probably take a lot more maintenance than grasses. Is that
They
why
would.
you're suggesting the grasses as opposed to flower beds?
That and aesthetics. Yep. Yeah.
Also, if you have an area where people are gathering, you might not want flowers there. They attract bees. So if you got food and diners and bees, not a good mix. Also, the fountains they're wonderful, but they are a pain in the neck. There are some newer ones that don't hold water. They have a reservoir under gravel, and they pump water up, so they make a sound, and you see the bubbling water, but you don't have a pool of water that collects trash and leaves and such.
And a liability as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. We appreciate you being
Sure.
here this evening.
Any other questions?
We're good. Thank
Good.
you.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, we caught all those typos.
Okay.
Yep. Thanks for calling to our attention.
Good presentation, thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a lot of fun.
Our last item for this evening is informational update from community development staff. Administrator Berry?
Thank you. Other than we're moving into the CIP Capital Improvement Program season here shortly, I have nothing new to report unless Laszlo has anything to add.
Nope, nothing to add.
Is that 180 slide deck thing that we do?
Yeah, and if you guys
Yes.
just want to set it up as a Q&A, we can provide the handouts and just answer any questions if that's what your preference is. That's what we're doing now with the governing body with the presentations. We're just, I'm the only thing I'm going to really present this year. Well, the schools do their presentation to the governing body, and I'll present the overall budget to the governing body. But other than that, we're just going to set up more for Q&As to give time for discussion.
Last year, Commissioner Mensing had said we were just going to do like a year's worth, and it was shorter last year. It was definitely much shorter than in previous years.
But yeah, the problem is with the planning commission, we don't know by this time what's actually FY25.
Sure.
Because what we're presenting to you first is the full wish list,
Gotcha.
everything. And then I get the revenues in March, and I see what we can actually afford. So then it shrinks how much we get. So I don't think we're not going to show you what's just 25. I think we'll just give you guys a handout
Fine.
with all the projects, then we can just take any questions based off that.
Very good.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Cool.
Thank you.
And just FYI, I mean, so I implemented kind of the presentations for full budgeting and CIP because in the past there was nothing and people just didn't know what was going on. So I wanted to change that, and the previous planning commissions, governing bodies appreciated that. I think everyone now is tracking what's going on, so we're kind of scaling that back a bit. Yeah.
Good. Great. Good. Thank you. And with that, would anyone care to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Motion, second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The time is 7:50.